Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We have a great presentation lined up here tonight. Ms. Stephanie Roche is with the Florida Department of Education, the Office of Student Financial Assistance, and she's going to go through a very interesting PowerPoint with you. Once she's done with her entire presentation, we will take questions. So as she's going through her presentation, and if you have questions that pop up, go ahead and type them down in the chat box. We've got some counselors here who are taking those questions, writing them down, and we'll be sure to ask those questions at the end of the presentation. So if something pops in your head and you want to ask, please go ahead and type it, and we will get at the very end of the presentation, you'll get answers to those questions. I see that it looks like just about everyone has done the poll question, and I appreciate that. At the end of the presentation, you'll take that poll again. We just want to see, where you are, what you've learned, and maybe what else we need to present for future presentations, maybe during semester 2. So that information is really important for us. And that's why I asked if you would only take or answer the question just one time, so that we've got accurate data and we know what kind of information you need. And I apologize, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Selena Rieker. I'm one of the Pasco eSchool guidance counselors here. I've got several other counselors in the room who I mentioned before will be taking and writing your questions down. So thank you once again for attending. At the end of the presentation, for those of you who are looking for collaboration credits, there will be a project for you to do. You will download the sheet, print it, fill it out, and then can submit it directly to your teacher, whatever teacher it is that you're submitting that collaboration for. So that will be at the end of the presentation. You will be able to get that download. We are also recording this presentation. So those of you who are in here, if you've got questions, tomorrow or the next day, you just can't quite remember what Stephanie presented about a particular topic, we will have this posted so you can go back through and re-watch the presentation. It's going to be valuable information, but it's a lot of information. So sometimes it's helpful to know you can go back and re-listen to it. So again, any questions that come up, please type them down in the chat box, and we'll be certain to answer all of those questions at the very end of the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephanie. All right, Stephanie, she's here, and she'll go ahead and start the presentation. All right, Stephanie, we're all ready. Go ahead.
All right, I'm at the end of the presentation here, so I've got to get to the beginning of the presentation from the slide. But thank you for joining everyone this evening. My name is Stephanie Roche, and I am an outreach representative with the state of Florida Office of Student Financial Assistance. Just a little history on myself. I have over 16 years in the financial aid experience between my years at Santa Fe College and 13 years with the state of Florida in my capacity as an outreach representative with the Department of Education. What we're going to provide for you tonight is an overview of financial aid, and that's going to basically give you a broad understanding of what financial aid is, where to apply for financial aid, and how to get assistance with completing this process. So when we're talking about financial aid, it's really important for you to understand that the financial aid that's available to you is going to come from various sources. Obviously, we want to focus on the free money first, and that's going to be in the form of gift aid. Now, gift aid could be referred to as a scholarship or a grant. Scholarships will have a merit-based component. So when we're basing scholarships on your merit, that's going to be your test scores, your GPAs, your involvement in civic groups and organizations, your community service hours. That is something you attain on your own personal merit. Grants, on the other hand, basically are going to be awarded to you based on your demonstrated financial need. And how we assess your need is by the FAFSA application, which we're going to speak about in detail in just a moment. So those are the two different types of free money. So, of course, you want to focus on applying for scholarships based on your personal merit. And then, of course, I'll explain to you the grant process of applying for grants that are going to be based on your demonstrated financial need. When we're talking about self-help financial aid, you may see on your FAFSA application, or you will see, the question that asks you about work study. What work study is a part-time job on your college campus. So whether it be a university, a college, or technical school, you're actually an employee of that particular school, and you're working to earn those federal dollars, which are considered financial aid. The work study positions are a great way to obviously network on your campus. So you'll be working in administrative offices. There's positions in the gym. There's positions in the library. There's all types of positions on your school campuses. If your school has an early childhood program, you may be working there. You actually need to go to an interview and be selected for that. So when you're indicating on your FAFSA application, yes, I'd like to be considered for a work study job, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed one. You actually have to talk to your financial aid office at the school you're going to be going to in the fall or even this summer and ask about the interview process for those work study positions. In addition to that, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about student loans, but I think it's important that you understand what they are and how they work. So student loans are going to be in your name as the student. There's no cosigner required. Your parents don't sign on these loans. You do not have to have a credit score or verifiable employment or income. The federal government is willing to lend you money at an interest rate that you will be paying back after you graduate from college, okay, or your program. So what that means is that the federal government is going to lend you money that you will in turn repay with interest at a later date and time. So obviously we want to make sure that you're executing all the options for free money first and foremost, rather than resorting to loans. But as you'll see on the next slide, when we're talking about college costs, if you're going to an out-of-state or a private institution, you might not have enough grant and scholarship money to cover all of your expenses. So when we're talking about expenses for school, we have direct costs and we have indirect costs. So on this slide, you're going to see examples of direct costs. This is what your institution is charging for tuition, okay? So when we talk about tuition, it's going to range depending on the school you're going to or you're applying to. So your two-year state college level, for example, you guys are here in Pasco County, we have Pasco Hernando State College, or if you're close to maybe Tarpon Springs, maybe you'll go to SPC. That tuition that you see, that $3,347, that is for 2 semesters, assuming full-time enrollment, okay? So as you look at the state university system level, for example, your FSU, your USF, your UF, your FAU, state university system schools here in Florida, it's about $9,000 for 2 semesters full-time enrollment. And then again, as you look at those private schools and those 4-year out-of-state schools, you can see where that tuition cost jumps tremendously, obviously, because you're paying those additional expenses for attending private or out-of-state. Now, if your goal or objective is to attend an out-of-state or a private institution, don't let the cost deter you. You just have to know that you're going to have to do a lot more work in regards to looking for that free money in the form of those scholarships and grants. As you're making applications to your colleges, you need to make sure that you're asking about their institutional money. Financial aid can come from the state of Florida, which, for example, we have Bright Futures here. It can come from the federal government, Pell Grants, work study, student loans, but a large portion of financial aid actually comes from the institution themselves, meaning the college or university. So as you're making application to these schools, and if you haven't started that process, now is the time to start working towards making those applications, especially for your schools who operate on a rolling admissions. Maybe the school is going to select who they're going to be accepting, on one specified date, for example, University of Florida. But most of your colleges work on a rolling admissions where the earlier you apply, the more opportunity you have to secure a position at that school. So we do encourage you to submit those applications as soon as you possibly can if you haven't done so already. But again, in that application process, you will need to ask each of those individual schools how you go about applying for their institutional financial aid. Some schools do it through your application to the college. Some schools have one application for all of the institutional scholarships and grants, and then other schools you have to apply for each of them individually. So it's going to be different on a case-by-case basis with each of the colleges and universities. So what you're seeing here again on the slide is the cost of tuition. So if you are a Take Stock student or you have a Florida prepaid account, a 2+2 or a 4-year plan, it really depends on what your parents or your family member purchased for you as to what it's going to cover for the upcoming year. going to be things like books, transportation, room and board, meal plans, all those extra costs that are going to be associated with you being a college student. So if you want more specific information as to what those colleges' costs are going to be, the total cost, you're going to need to look up what we call the net price calculator, and that's NET price calculator. And that net price calculator is found on each individual school's website, meaning the colleges and universities. That's going to give you an overview of how much of that school is going to cost for an academic year. For example, to attend USF for an academic year, it's going to cost you $9,000 roughly in the tuition aspect, but the total cost of attendance inclusive of your direct and indirect is closer to $24,000 an academic year. So financial aid is designed to cover direct and indirect costs. So if you have $24,000 in financial aid coming to you, the school is going to deduct their $9,000, and whatever's left on your account, you get a refund for your living expenses. So the objective is to have more financial aid in your account at your school so that you can receive those monies for your living expenses and books and things of that nature. In your cost of attendance, they do build books in as a factor. I do want to caution you, most of your schools, if you are in fact due a refund from your financial aid package, they will allow you to go and charge your books to the bookstore on that college campus. Books can range anywhere from $200 to $400 a piece. So if you need 4 of those, it adds up quite quickly. So I suggest you look at other options. You can download an e-format of your book. You can go on Amazon. You can go on websites such as Chegg, CHEGG, and download a copy, or maybe rent a book for a semester for $30 or $40 versus paying for the book. So those are ways that you can reduce your out-of-pocket expenses that are built into that cost of attendance. So please keep those things in mind. Also, in regards to other costs, meal plans. If your school requires you to take a meal plan, they may only require you to take, lunch or breakfast or dinner. You don't have to take the full-on meal plan with snacks in between, because many of those times students end up not using the full value of their meal plan, and they don't roll those monies over to the next semester. You actually forfeit the money that's left on your meal plan account. So those are some tips that I could give you in regards to trying to reduce your out-of-pocket expenses when it comes to college. The FAFSA application. Now, the acronym for FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You do not pay money to get money when it comes to applications, whether they be scholarships or grants. It is the largest source of federal financial aid, and the application is currently open. Okay, so many of you, I would imagine, have already submitted the FAFSA application. If you haven't, you're not too late. It opened on October the 1st, and that is actually for the fall of 17-18. So if you're not in a position where you have filed the FAFSA application, you want to go ahead and get that done as soon as you possibly can, because most of those monies that I talked about from the institution and other monies from the state of Florida are on a first-come, first-served basis. And how the schools determine if you're first-come, first-served is by your initial filing date on the FAFSA. So the sooner you submit your FAFSA, the more monies you could possibly achieve. With that being said, again, next year, this is an annual application. Next year, your school, as well as FAFSA, will send you a reminder that tells you, yes, you have to renew your FAFSA on October 1st for the 18-19 academic year. So for this year, we are using your 2015 tax information. So if you worked this year, you will use your tax return as well as your parents' tax return to file the 17-18 FAFSA. We are using prior tax information, and you will be able to retrieve that information electronically through this data retrieval tool, where the federal government makes your tax information available to FAFSA within the application. And you'll be redirected to the irs.gov webpage. You'll type in your name, your filing status, your address, and then it'll allow you to transfer the information directly from the IRS website into the FAFSA application. It works pretty seamlessly for most. Here is a screenshot of the website. I just want to mention on this page that you go to FAFSA.gov. If you do a Google search or you type in FAFSA.com, what's going to come up is a paid-for site. So you might spend an hour getting through the application, and you get to the last page, and it asks you for a credit card or $75 to process the application. You'll know you're in the wrong place. Remember, that acronym stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So you would just select the option that says Start a New FAFSA Application. Next year, as a returning user, you're going to log in with your ID and password, which I'll explain to you in just a moment. So this is the screenshot that you're going to see. When you select Start a New FAFSA, it's going to give you 2 years to choose from. Remember, if you're starting school in the fall of 2017, you will complete the 17-18 FAFSA. If you are starting this summer of 17, you will also complete the 16-17 and the 17-18 FAFSA application. Financial aid runs in an academic year, which starts in August. Important information that I can give you in regards to the FAFSA application is, of course, you want to make sure you're monitoring priority deadlines, especially at that institutional level that I spoke about earlier. In regards to dependency, you are the applicant on the FAFSA application. Many of you will be considered dependent because you're under the age of 24. Now, there's a series of questions on the FAFSA application that will confirm your dependency. And those questions for you are you 24? Are you married as the student? Do you have a child that you provide more than half the support for? Are you an orphan or a ward of the court? Are you in a court-ordered legal guardianship? Are you homeless or at risk of being homeless and registered with your school district in Pasco County as a homeless youth through social services? Are you a veteran of the armed forces? Are your parents deceased? Or are you working on a degree beyond a bachelor's degree? It'll ask you if you're in a graduate program. If you do not check yes to any of those questions on the FAFSA application, you will be required to provide parental information. Now, who is considered a parent for FAFSA purposes? The federal government recognizes biological parent or parents, adoptive parent or parents, parents of the same gender that are married for FAFSA purposes, and parents that are the student's biological parents who have never been married, yet you live under the same roof, okay? In the case of divorce or separation, the parent you use for the FAFSA is going to be your custodial parent. And for FAFSA purposes, your custodial parent is the parent that provides more than half of your support. It's not always the parent that you live with. It's not always the parent that claims you on the tax return. So that's a determination that you have to make within your own family. And more than 50% of your support is basically the parent that provides you food, clothing, shelter, transportation, and you get an idea of what more than 50% of your support is. Just basically, you would know who your custodial parent is, I would imagine. If you have questions, you can always speak to someone in financial aid at the school you'll be going to, and they can help clarify that, or you can email me at a later date and time. So with that being said, if your custodial parent is divorced, then it's just their information that goes on the FAFSA. You don't have to use your other parent's information. If your parent that you're using on the FAFSA as your custodial parent has remarried, you do have to use your step-parent's information as well, because it's household income for your custodial parent. So if your parent has remarried, you do use your step-parent's information as well, regardless of whether they provide you any financial support whatsoever. It is a requirement by the FAFSA application. I also want to highlight for male students, you'll see a question about selective service. In order to receive federal financial aid, you will have to click the option that says register me, or you will not be eligible to receive federal financial aid. So in order to be registered for the selective service, if you're under the age of 18, if you check the box that says register me, they will actually register you after your 18th birthday, okay? So in regards to dependency, if it's not cut and dry, meaning you cannot answer yes to one of those questions in regards to dependency, maybe your parents abandoned you. Maybe you have a parent that you've never met, and one parent is incarcerated, or one parent is deceased. You are going to have to work with the college at the financial aid office that you'll be going to confirm why you are not able to provide parental information. A parent's unwillingness to apply or give you information financially for financial aid purposes is not grounds for a dependency override. These are extenuating circumstances, abuse, neglect, abandonment, DCF was involved, law enforcement was involved, your guidance counselors know the situation. So if you're living with someone else, you would never put their information on the FAFSA unless they adopted you. It's only for your biological or adopted parents. Otherwise, you'll have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis at the school that you're going to be going to. Now, in regards to school codes, you can list up to 10 colleges on the FAFSA application. Just because you list the school doesn't mean they're going to give you an idea of what your award letter is. You have to apply to the college, pay the application fee or use a fee waiver if you qualify, and get accepted before they will take the time and the resources to package your financial aid amount. So once you get an acceptance letter from a school, in your acceptance letter, your school is going to give you a user ID and a password for each of the schools you get accepted to. So if you get accepted to your 3 top schools, you'll have an ID and password for each of those schools. You will take those credentials and log on to your portal at each of those schools. For example, at UF it's called GatorLink, USF it's called Oasis. That is where you log in to register for classes. That is where you log in to view your financial aid award letters. That is where the financial aid office is going to tell you if they need a document from you. If you selected the option on your FAFSA that says I'm a homeless youth or I have a legal guardian, your school is going to ask you for supporting documentation to substantiate that. So make sure you have all your documents. And please make sure that you're logging into your portal because that's where all the communication from your school is going to come from. They're not going to call you. They're not going to text you. They're going to put everything in your portal, and you're going to have to take ownership of logging into those various portals and checking that information. Now, in regards to signing the FAFSA application, you will use an FSA ID and password that you create. In regards to your signatures, you will have one, and your parent will have one. Even if you're providing 2 parents information on the FAFSA, only 1 parent will have to sign. Your ID and password will stay the same. It actually is attached to your Social Security number, so you use that every year, year after year. So your ID for you stays the same, your ID for your parent stays the same annually. So make sure when you're registering for your IDs and passwords that you use your email account for yours and your parent's email address for theirs, because that's going to be the way that they track you. You can't use the same email address twice for the FAFSA purposes. If your parent has had an ID in the past and they don't remember it, when they log in or try to apply for a new one, it's going to recognize them and prompt them to reset their credentials. So that's something that you'll use. For parents or students whose parents are undocumented, if you are a citizen or an eligible non-citizen with an alien registration number, you are eligible for financial aid. Currently, deferred action students are not eligible for financial aid. You do get in-state tuition here in Florida at your state colleges and universities. But as far as your parents, if they are undocumented and they don't have Social Security numbers, even if they do have socials, if they do not have a citizenship or a resident alien registration number, they need to put all zeros on the Social Security field on the FAFSA. They can still enter all their tax information and they can submit the FAFSA. But you cannot sign it electronically. So if your parent's undocumented, you will have to physically print the signature page. Your parent will have to sign it. You can sign electronically. Your parent will physically have to sign it. You guys will have to put it in an envelope and mail it to the address on that printout in order to have your financial aid processed. In regards to student aid report, the results of your FAFSA, you will actually see them when you hit submit. If you've already submitted, you can always log back in and check your results on the student aid report. But you typically will see those if all the information is calculated correctly that evening. Otherwise, it will take 3 to 5 days for them to process. On that financial aid report that you'll see is basically going to only tell you 2 things. If you're eligible for Pell Grant, and if so, how much, and it will also give your student loan eligibility. It won't tell you anything about Bright Futures. It won't tell you anything about work study, supplemental opportunity grants. None of the other financial aid that you might be eligible for is going to be listed. Only Pell, if you're eligible, and loans, okay? Everything else is awarded at the institutional level. Again, on a first-come, first-served basis, or if it's merit-based aid that you achieved on your own personal merit, your financial aid will post that to your student account at your school that you end up going to. So that's really important to understand. The expected family contribution is basically an index number. If you are on free or reduced lunch, your EFC is going to be 0, meaning the federal government feels that your family is extremely in a position where they cannot afford to pay for anything out of pocket for you to go to college. At a 0 EFC, you're going to receive the maximum Pell Grant amount, which is $5,815. So if you think back to the slide, if you're going to Pasco Hernandez State College and it's only $3,300 and you're getting almost $6,000, you've got $3,000 coming to you as a refund for living expenses. But again, if you're going to that out-of-state or private school where the tuition is $30,000 a year, that $5,800 is not even going to put a small fraction of a dent into your tuition costs. So again, we want to make sure that you understand the money you get from the federal government is limited to the maximum of $5,815. Not everyone will qualify for Pell. If you qualify for Pell, it may not be the full amount. It's going to be based on your family's results from the FAFSA. It looks at your family's income. It looks at your household size. It looks at the number of dependents your family has and how many of those dependents are actually in college. There's other factors on the FAFSA. They look at rental properties. You do not report the value of the home your family lives in. You don't report any values of retirement accounts, 401s, Roth IRAs, IRA accounts. Those things do not get reported. But if your parent has rental properties and other assets, those get reported and factored into the FAFSA calculation of your expected family contribution. So you may or may not be eligible for the Pell Grant based on what the federal government feels your family should be able to contribute for you going to school. The highest amount for the federal grant is $5,815 annually. That's if you were a 0 EFC. Okay? The results of your FAFSA will be calculated when you hit submit on the FAFSA application. And again, you'll see that in your portal on the student account, and that's an annual amount. So you want to make sure you always stay in constant contact. You want to make sure that you contact your school, stay in touch with the school. Florida prepaid, of course, does get included if the parent's assets exceed a certain dollar amount. So in the FAFSA application, when you get to the question about assets, it may ask you if your parents have assets exceeding more than $20,000, $5,000, $8,000. It's going to vary per person because of all the other factors on the FAFSA. You may have to report Florida prepaid, or you may not, depending if your assets exceed that dollar amount. But if it does exceed the dollar amount, then of course the value of the Florida prepaid, if your parents own more than one plan, does get reported on the FAFSA application under Educational Savings Plans or 529. So that's a good question. But not everybody has to report that. And again, this application has skip logic built into it. Everyone will see a different set of questions based on your accounts. Florida prepaid accounts are basically where your parent locked in tuition rates when you were born or when you were an infant. So if you had a Florida prepaid account, your parents would be able to explain that to you, or your family member, whoever purchased the plan. So that's something that your parents paid for throughout, the time you were born until now, locking in yesterday's tuition and giving you today's rate at a later date and time. So in regards to using professional judgments, if your parents have had a change in circumstance financially, because remember, we're using 2-year-old data when we're filing the FAFSA now with the prior year. So if your family's income has drastically changed from 2015 to where you are today, you still need to file the FAFSA with 2015 data. Then again, you need to go and see the school that you'll be going to and ask them to recalculate that through the professional judgment. Again, if you have an extenuating circumstance with your family and you don't have access to parent information and you don't fall into one of those parameters and those questions in regards to dependency, you need to go see your financial aid office for the professional judgment. They're going to ask you for supporting documentation. And of course, we want to make sure you always use your loans as a last resort. The FAFSA application is the federal application. The FSAA is the Florida financial aid application, which is also open. So all seniors should take advantage of that. These applications should be done your senior year of high school in October. So this Florida financial aid application is for current year seniors. And with that being said, if you are not quite meeting the requirements for Bright Futures, maybe you don't have your test scores quite there, or maybe you're missing a few community service hours, go ahead and submit the application. It takes 7 minutes to apply. We don't require any parental information, and we'll get your updated test scores and your GPA and your community service hours from your school district throughout the year. So go ahead and submit the FSAA application, and we will receive those updates from your school district. So you have until August 30th. We prefer your high school graduation date in order to be eligible for those state of Florida aid programs. So the FSAA website is floridastudentfinancialaid.org, and this is just a screenshot of where you would go to apply. So on this slide here, you're going to select the option that says state grants and scholarships, and then you're going to select the option at the top that says applications and updates. And then from there, you're going to click on the option that says FFAA for new applicants, which is the hyperlink there, and it'll take you straight to the application where you're going to apply for the grants and scholarships offered from the state of Florida. So kind of like the FAFSA application, considering you for work study and loans and Pell Grant and other things, the FFAA does the same. So if you're a student who says, I'm not going to meet that test score requirement for Bright Futures, or I haven't done any community service hours, please take the 7 minutes to fill out the FFAA, because it's not a Bright Futures only application. So all the grants from the state of Florida that you see here you're going to be considered for. The scholarships that you see on this page, you'll be automatically considered for. And then, of course, other special interest programs. So it's one application for a multitude of scholarships and grants available through the state of Florida. So every senior should submit that application. It takes 7 minutes. Award amounts for some of our most popular grant scholarship programs, the academic level. It depends on your Bright Futures as far as your test score requirements and your GPA and your community service hours, but there's different levels to Bright Futures. The state of Florida will make the determination based on your final transcript. If you take the summer SAT or ACT, we will actually take those test scores into consideration when we're super scoring your information to see if you're eligible for one of our Bright Futures scholarship programs. But basically, based on your enrollment level, whether you're working on a 2-year program, a technical degree program, a 4-year program, the award amounts are going to vary based on the different types of program you're eligible for, whether it be academic level, medallion level, gold seal level, and then what program of study you're enrolled in. So your school will post that matriculation, the value of that Bright Futures, in your award letter. There are other programs I just want to highlight on this slide. If you're a child or spouse of a deceased or disabled veteran, if your parent sustained 100% service-related injuries or is deceased based on service-related death, then you would get full tuition and fees at any public institution. So these awards can be used in conjunction with federal aid, with Bright Futures, with Florida prepaid plans, because remember, your financial aid can be awarded up to the cost of attendance. We're not capping you or limiting you by the tuition aspect. It's the full cost of attendance. So when financial aid offices attempt to award you, they want to, of course, try to help you meet that entire cost. A couple of other programs, the Florida Resident Access Grant, that's $3,000 annually. Basically, you have to be attending a private institution who is eligible to participate and be a Florida resident in order to receive this money. So there's no ESC cutoff. You just have to be a Florida resident and attend a private school, and you automatically get that $3,000 a year in addition to your other programs if you attend a private school in Florida that participates. Florida Student Assistant Grant, that's one of those first come, first served need-based awards from the state of Florida. So remember, an earlier FAFSA application may at times yield a higher award amount from the various scholarship and grant programs. So you want to make sure you always file your FAFSA as soon as you possibly can every year. FloridaShines.org, you can track your Bright Futures progress from there. Also in that website, there's another great tool called My Career Shines. It's new for this year, so if you are undecided on what kind of career, what you want to do after high school, what you want to pursue, there are some assessments you could do out there on My Career Shines. It's kind of like the military ASVAB, where you could take some personal assessment quizzes, and it will give you some careers and some ideas of careers that you may want to explore. And when we're talking about college this evening, you know, we use the word college very loosely, but I use it also broadly. So when we say college, it's anything you do after high school. So that could mean a private school, that could mean a public school, that could mean a 4-year degree, that can mean a technical program. You know, there's a lot of great technical programs out there that are very low cost, especially associated with your local technical schools, Marchman, for example. There's cosmetology, there's heating and air, there's welding. Some of those careers yield a higher wage than possibly a bachelor's degree. You're just really going to have to do your homework and find out what's out there. We just want you to do something productive and something effective after high school. So you might want to look at Beyond College. That's another great website that's going to tell you how much you can expect to make in these particular positions or professions that you're looking towards. So you want to make sure that, especially if you're borrowing money, for example, I'll use the LPN program, you can become a licensed practical nurse for a fraction of the amount that it would cost at a private school. So at a private school may cost $30,000, $40,000 for those credentials. You still sit for the same state board. You could have got that same LPN or got that same education from your technical school in your county for a fraction of the cost. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the financial aid covers you, but to a certain extent. So wouldn't you rather have more money for your living expenses, more money to put away for grad school? And if you're going to be going to a higher cost school, really work with that school to find out what type of institutional money that they're willing to assist you with if they do have a higher cost, okay? So those are some of the things that I could just give you in regards to tools that you can use as exploring different opportunities in regards to careers or programs after high school. So this is just a screenshot of the Florida Shines website where you can actually, just do some exploratory research there. FAFSWeb, many of you probably utilize the FAFSWeb website, I would imagine. You have to be 15 in order to register for FAFSWeb, but it's basically a database. So scholarships that are national scholarships, first-generation college students, left-handed scholarships, multiple language, bilingual scholarships are all posted within this FAFSWeb website. So anytime or scholarships.com is another one. So you create a profile on yourself, and you don't stop looking for money your senior year of high school. You continue to look for money when you're in college. You network on your campus. You talk to your professors. You make it known that you're looking for free money for college, because if you are working, in the first semester at your school and you receive a scholarship for $1,000 and your tuition has been paid, what the school will do is they will actually post that $1,000 to your account and give you a refund of that $1,000 if your cost of attendance have not been met. If you took out a student loan and you want that $1,000 to go towards paying off that student loan early, your school can apply that $1,000 scholarship towards your loan. So don't stop looking for money in college, especially if you're continuing on for grad school or higher level programs. There's not a lot of free money out there. It's going to be student loans at a higher interest rate as a graduate professional student. So please take advantage of all the free money, especially that's available in your undergrad programs. So FAFSA is one of those resources. Of course, your high school, you've got information on your district webpage, your Education Foundation Scholarship here in Pasco County. You want to make sure that you're making application for the Education Foundation Scholarship. That's going to be your local money. Again, protect yourself. Don't pay money to get money. I will actually notate here that you want to make sure you also are protecting your Social Security number. So as you enter into college, you are a target for identity theft, okay? Number two, I think it's right after the elderly, it's college-bound students. So please protect your Social Security number. You might be living in a dorm or an apartment with people you don't know, people are coming and going. And if you have a piece of paper with your social or something laying around, someone may have access directly to your identity. And once your identity has been compromised, it's your responsibility to make those repairs and rebuild your credit from there. And some employers, when you're out there in the workforce, when they do a background check, they're looking at your credit score. So if you have a credit score because your identity has been compromised 4 years ago when you were a freshman in college and you never knew it because you never looked at a copy of your free credit report, you could be going out to the workforce, and the employers that you could be potentially working for could be denying you employment based on your credit score. So it's really important you take advantage of the free credit report that the federal government offers you annually as well to keep tabs on what's going on with your credit score and your credit report and anything that's out there based on your credit. Educational tax credits, you and or your parents, depending on tax situations, can file for one of these tax credits. You would just want to check with your CPA, or if you file on TurboTax or one of the other electronic profile or means for filing tax returns. It'll ask if you had a college student or if you were in fact a college student, and it'll actually assess whether or not you're eligible for the tax credits or not. Mapping Your Future is another organization we partner with. So if you wanted to jump on their website, there's a lot of great information in regards to financial literacy. That's something that's really important to the state of Florida. This presentation is part of our financial literacy program, but the state of Florida also has topics on how to finance higher education, money management, budgeting, credit management, school and life management, career planning, all the components that are going to make you successful as an adult, okay? So we really put an emphasis on, another one is repaying your student loans. We put an emphasis on financial literacy so you can start making informed decisions, because a lot of these decisions that you're going to be making in the next year or so are going to impact you long term, for the rest of your life. So you want to make sure that you're making sound and educated and informed decisions. And that's what we aim to do at the state of Florida, is get information into the hands of parents and students here in the state of Florida. This is our contact information, so if you need to reach me, you can call the 1-800 number. We will also share my direct contact information with you. If you want to click on the link there, you'll be able to find my contact information there directly. I actually live in Pinellas County, so I'm not too far away from you guys. I cover 8 counties, so I'm on the road quite a bit. So the best way to reach me is via email, even if it's a quick email that says, "Hey, Stephanie, please call me. I have a quick question about my FAFSA application." Also, in regards to your FAFSA, if you have a question or you get stuck during the application, I don't have access directly to the federal government's webpage to answer your questions specifically. I can answer general questions, but if you're in the application and you're stuck, number one, there's a helpful hints column. So if you mouse over the question on the right-hand side, it's going to give you more detailed information in regards to what that question is asking specifically. There's also a chat feature, and there's also a 1-800 number, which is 1-800, the number 4, and then FED, as in federal, FED, AID, federal aid, 1-800-4-FED-AID. So that's another resource that you can reach out to, especially if you're having a problem with maybe your parent's password and ID, or if you're having a problem signing the FAFSA or getting logged in, or maybe you mistyped your social security number when you were entering your data and you want to do a correction. That's the number that you would call to resolve your issues with your FAFSA. You can log into the FAFSA anytime and make corrections. If you want to add a school code, if you forgot to include your parent, maybe their parents live with them or parents live with you and they actually pay for more than 50% of their expenses, and you're like, I didn't know if I should include my grandma in the household or not. Anytime you want to make a change to the FAFSA, you log back into the application, you can make changes there directly. So we'll open the floor to questions that you may have. I want to make sure I address all your questions this evening. I know it seems a little bit overwhelming, but please use the resources that are available to you to get you through this process. And ask questions. If you're looking at your award letter at your college level and something doesn't look right and you don't understand it, go to the financial aid office. Another few things I want to tell you. In regards to the day that your fees are due, please go into your portal several days before your fees are due. If you see any outstanding balance there, if your Bright Futures hasn't posted, if you're held up in verification and your school's waiting to verify your documents, if you have an outstanding balance on the night the fees are due, the computer system will drop you from all your classes. So you might have this perfect schedule and you registered for classes 2 months before school started, and the first day of class you go into class and the instructor says, well, you're not on my roster, go to the registrar. If you're at a large institution, you can be in line for up to 4 hours to find out, oh, we dropped you from your classes on the day fees were due because you had an outstanding balance. The computer system does not differentiate between someone who owes $5 or $5,000. So if you're not in a position to pay that and you want to defer your payment based on the financial aid that's coming to you, then you need to make sure you're asking the financial aid office for a deferment. Don't wait until the week of classes to go in and speak to somebody in the financial aid office, because you will be waiting in very, very long lines and they will be inundated with other students. So you want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row and you have everything done well before the start of your term. In order for Bright Futures, in order to renew your Bright Futures scholarship at the end of the spring term for the medallion level and the gold seal level, you must maintain a 2.75 cumulative GPA. For the academic level, it's a 3.0 GPA in order to renew the scholarship. During your first year only, if you do not meet the requirements to renew, you can take summer courses. Bright Futures does not fund in the summer, but you can take summer coursework and pay for them through other means, whether you have financial aid or Pell Grant, or if you have Florida prepaid, and you can actually use those hours to elevate your GPA to hopefully attain the renewal requirement for Bright Futures, because if you don't do that during the summer, you'll lose the scholarship forever. Same thing, if you drop classes, if you withdraw from a course, you have to pay the money back to the state of Florida, or your next term's financial aid will be canceled as far as the Bright Futures money goes. You can make satisfactory arrangements to pay out of your next term's financial aid as well, so just work with your school directly. For your federal aid programs, such as the Pell and the work study and the loans, you have to maintain a 2.0 GPA. You also have to complete 67% of the classes you attempt. So if you register for 4 classes and you withdraw from 2 of them, even if you have A's in the other 2 classes and a 4.0 GPA, you are now at 50% completion. Your financial aid could be on probation for the next term until you bring that completion rate up, or depending on your school, they might just cancel your entire financial aid for the next term. So before you drop a class, if you're on Bright Futures especially, or if you're on federal financial aid, please go see financial aid and find out how it's going to impact your next term's financial aid monies. Those are really important things that you need to pay attention to, and everything from your school is going to be communicated through that online portal. So I guess we'll take a moment to answer any questions. I hope I was able to answer some questions throughout the presentation. But for the majority of you that have already completed your FAFSA, just make sure you're following up with your school. I will tell you, don't expect to receive those financial aid letters right away. Your state college levels will probably start getting out award letters in February. State university system have indicated maybe December. And then if you're at private institutions, you might get something as early as this month. So we're a little too early to start receiving these financial aid award letters from our schools, but at least your FAFSA is completed and they can start packaging your financial aid when the school starts that process. And that's going to vary for the institution, so that would be a question specifically for them. All right, any questions this evening?
Perfect, Stephanie. Thank you very much for doing this presentation for us. I think it was important that you pointed out that once you get into college, your GPA still matters, because I think sometimes we forget about that we work really hard our senior year to have a GPA, and then that first year of college forget that those GPAs still matter to keep our scholarship.
Absolutely.
So thank you for pointing that out. So I have a couple of questions. Some of these you've kind of hit on already, but I just want some specific on them. One of them was, what about children who can only provide just one parent's information when they're doing that FAFSA?
Again, if their parents divorced or separated, and that's the only parent that they need to provide information for, then they're not required to provide the second parent's information. Now, if the second parent is just living in another country and their parents are still married, then of course they need to provide that second parent's information as well. But, you know, in regards to custodial parent, it would just be the custodial parent's information that goes on the FAFSA application.
Okay, perfect. So if your parents are divorced, you're 18 and you work to provide most of your own essentials, you're still needing to report your parents' information as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. So as far as applying for FAFSA and some of the scholarships and federal money that you spoke about, when should a student be doing that? Their junior year, end of their junior year, their senior year? When would you recommend a student to start that?
Well, their applications themselves, as far as the FAFSA application and the Florida financial aid application, open October of their senior year. But students can start looking for scholarship money as early as middle school. You know, the take stock, they get identified in middle school as take stock students. So you want to make sure that, again, the FAFSA website, you can't use that until you're 15, but you can start looking for scholarship money. So you're just going to have to kind of comb through the requirements as you get those matches or those hits on those FAFSA websites to find out if you have to be a high school senior to submit that application, or if a junior or sophomore freshman student can apply. But it's never too early. Also, don't discount talking to your parents, talking to their employers, talking to your neighbors, talking to any civic group or affiliation that you may have, whether it be a church or a synagogue or a mosque or Kiwanis, Rotary Club, Boys and Girls Club. There's a lot of opportunities out there, even where your parents bank. You might have an account at Suncoast. For example, Suncoast has a $10,000 scholarship. You have to have $5 in your account at Suncoast to be eligible to apply for that Suncoast scholarship. Who you do business with? I don't know if you guys have Willa-Lacucci for electricity up there, but Willa-Lacucci does a scholarship for their people who use them as an electric company. Who you do business with for your cell phone provider, where you buy groceries. All of those companies have scholarships, so don't leave any stone unturned. Think big picture. Just don't think that you're boxed into Bright Futures and the FAFSA. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and you don't have to wait until your senior year to start looking for them. If it's, you can't apply until you're a senior with that one, put it on a spreadsheet, and then next year, as a senior, I'm going to go back and apply for that scholarship.
Perfect. Thank you. There was a couple of questions about parents being retired. How will they report that income on the FAFSA if they're retired?
Well, retirement is reported on the tax return, so it will be pulled directly from the tax return. for FAFSA purposes. So if you receive a pension, if your parents receive a pension, then that is reported on our tax return, and that comes from the FAFSA data retrieval tool. Now, if your parents are on disability, which is untaxed, that gets reported in the disability section on the FAFSA. If you have Social Security or some other type of benefits that are untaxed, those do not get reported. So there's some income as far as Social Security that's taxable and some that's not taxable. If it's taxable, it gets reported on the FAFSA. If it's not taxed, it is not reported on the FAFSA, such as disability and, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the second one, Social Security.
Okay.
Those are not taxed, so they're not reported. But if it's a pension and it's on your tax return, it is reported.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for clarifying. Another question about the FAFSA, working for out-of-state colleges or, you know, some fine arts degrees, those students who are pursuing a degree in a fine art. Would out-of-state or any kind of fine art, would that be?
Yeah, the FAFSA is a federal application, meaning it's a national application. So any school that is receiving federal financial aid, Title IV, which is probably 98% of them, you would just indicate your fine arts school on the FAFSA in the drop-down when you're selecting colleges, and they will get your results as well.
Perfect. Another question back to the FAFSA and the financial aid part of things. What if the custodial parent's not in your life anymore? Do you still need to put their information of just the parent that you live with?
Well, your custodial parent, I would imagine, would be in your life if they were your custodial parent. So if they had, you know, more than 50% of your support, then of course I would imagine that you would have contact with that person. So when we're saying custodial parent, it's the person that you have contact with, it's the person that provides you food, shelter, clothing, transportation, and just your everyday expenses. That's your custodial parent. If you don't have contact with that parent, and maybe you're living with a friend or a family member and it's not been recognized through the court system in the form of a legal guardianship, then again, you have to go to the college and assess. They will help you assess whether or not you can qualify for a professional judgment dependency override. But these are going to be extenuating circumstances again: abuse, neglect, abandonment. DCF was involved, law enforcement was involved, your guidance counselors knew and are willing to write letters for you.
Okay, perfect.
That's handled at the school level.
Okay, thank you for clarifying the definition there of the custodial parent for some of our students.
Of course.
One of the other questions, though, you mentioned guardianship. So if a student is living with their sister and she's got temporary guardianship, does that count or does it need to be? No.
It does not count. It has to be a court-ordered legal guardianship.
Okay.
The power of attorney, temporary guardianship does not count. It's, remember, for FAFSA purposes, it is biological parents, adoptive parents, parents of the same gender that live under the same roof that are married, and then parents that are the student's biological parents that have never been married but yet they live under the same roof. That is it. So regardless of whether sister claims you on the tax return and is your temporary guardian, for FAFSA purposes, you are not using your sister's information. Parents only. Okay.
A question about the free or reduced lunch that you mentioned earlier, that you would be awarded the $5,815.
Correct.
How is that given? It's given directly to the college first?
Okay, so that's a great question. All of your financial aid, whether it's federal financial aid, state financial aid, local money, scholarships, grants, loans, everything is deposited at the school that you're going to. So once you make a decision as far as what school you're going to and you register at that school in turn notifies the federal and state government where you're going based on your registration, and then those monies are sent directly to that college and deposited into your school account at that school. Again, you access how much money is in your account through that online portal at that school with your ID and password for that particular school. So the monies get sent there based on your registration. On the day that fees are due, the school will deduct from that account for that semester what you owe the school. If there's a surplus there, you'll get a refund a week after classes start after the drop and add period. But if there's a deficit, you get a bill. And again, if that bill is not paid by the day that fees are due, your classes will be dropped for non-payment.
Okay, very good. And one last question on just clarifying the deceased parent. If your parent is deceased, you do not put them on your FAFSA?
You would put your custodial parent that is living on your FAFSA application.
Okay, perfect. And then also, do you need to wait until you're actually admitted into the university before you start applying for scholarships and for financial aid?
No, absolutely not. You can start that process at any time. The only thing that I would encourage you to do is work directly with the colleges and the universities for those institutional monies. Now, you want to make sure that you're, accepted to those schools. But again, if the institutional scholarship application opens in January and you're not going to find out until February, March if you got accepted, then you still want to file the application in January because you could be missing out on thousands of dollars from the institutions themselves.
Perfect, thank you. And I just wanted to touch on two other things that came through. You mentioned about the need to reapply every year for financial aid. And also students who think that they might not qualify for the aid should go ahead and apply anyways. As you pointed out, that there's money that the state of Florida gives, not just the Bright Future. So I just wanted to bring that to, remind everyone again that definitely apply, even if you're not certain that you're going to qualify based on family income or anything else.
Correct. And most of your schools will encourage you to do so because most of your colleges and universities, they want to see if you're eligible for federal financial aid before they'll even look at you for institutional. So for a student who says, my parent makes too much, we're not doing the FAFSA, they could be potentially losing out on institutional scholarships. And those institutional need-based scholarships may have a higher EFC cutoff for their need-based money than the federal government does or the state government does. So yes, the FAFSA is the first step in the financial aid process as a senior.
Perfect. Okay. And then we had a question about applying for the actual student loans themselves. If you have done the options of the free through the FAFSA, the student loans, where would they apply directly for the loan part?
They don't. So basically, filing the FAFSA, you're making an application for a loan. So if you know you're not going to be eligible for Pell and you're just eligible for loans, or if you want to take a student loan on top of your Pell and the other monies, the FAFSA is the application, and then the school will post that in your portal. Now, in order to get the loan money as a first-time borrower, there's a 30-day hold. You'll have to sign a promissory note with the federal government, basically stating that I acknowledge this is a loan, I intend to pay it back with X amount of interest over time. And you also have to do what we call it is an entrance counseling, where you have to do an online or in-person entrance counseling through your school. So you just don't get the loan money. You have to do certain things in order to receive it. So again, logging into your portal, accepting the loan, doing the loan counseling, and signing the promissory note electronically.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and flip to open up the poll and the collaboration. So those folks who feel like they've gotten their questions answered can go ahead and take that poll, and then we'll continue to answer some of those questions. Some folks have some more, into personal questions to ask. So let me flip to that real quick.
Sure.
And you all will see that the crossword PDF is up, so you'll download that. You can print it and submit that to your teachers, and if you'll go ahead and start answering the poll questions there for us. You see that Stephanie has also put her direct email address in the chat box. So any questions, something that pops in your head tonight after you've kind of had a chance to digest all of this information, you can email her directly, and she's more than happy to answer those questions. I've got a couple of more that I see here in the chat box that we haven't answered, so I'm going to pass those along to Stephanie. She's also put her phone number on there. Thank you. So this whole entire presentation here will be on the Pasco eSchool's website, the link to it. So if you've got questions or you want to be able to go back through and look at a couple of the slides, you might have missed something, it will be available for you to do that. Stephanie, one of the questions that I see that has popped up several times is that free or reduced lunch. Now, for our students, they fill out an application on Pasco County's website for the free and reduced. So they're asking specifically, does that free or reduced, is that transferring directly into the FAFSA? Is there more paperwork on your side that would be needed to verify?
There is a question on the parent section of the FAFSA if their student qualifies for free or reduced lunch, if they receive temporary assistance for needy families, if they receive SNAP, which is the food stamp program. So those are questions specifically for the parent. So when this logic is in the FAFSA application, it's assessing your parent's income and what you're eligible for. So it's not going to ask a student whose parent's receiving benefits questions about assets and investments and Florida prepaid balances and things of that nature. So again, it has skip logic built into the system. I just can't tell a student student based on, if you told me my parent makes $40,000 a year, how much Pell Grant am I going to get? It doesn't work that way because there's so many other factors and variables on the FAFSA. We can all make the same adjusted gross income, but we will all have different results for the expected family contribution based on those other variables. What I can tell you is that if your parents are receiving food stamps, if you are on free reduced lunch, if you are receiving temporary assistance for needy families, you're going to be eligible at a zero EFC.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, just a quick sidebar here. I'm seeing some comments in the chat box about having the PDF emailed. There's a download file button, so you'll be able to download it right to your desktop. So for those of you who are having trouble with it, if you can go ahead and try that, and then please let us know if you're having issues with downloading the actual assignment itself. There was another question, Stephanie, about a young lady had some medical issues that came up with her father, now having some severe money issues. Is that something that she would deal directly with the school and their financial aid office?
Correct. You would still file the FAFSA with your 2015 tax information. If you have excessive medical bills, then you would take those copies of those bills for that tax year, or your current earnings, depending on when the medical or the illness occurred. You would take either your current earnings or those medical bills and or both combined to the financial aid office in order for them to possibly do the professional judgment and recalculate your results based on those additional factors.
Perfect.
But that's done directly at the school that you're going to be going to.
Okay, very good. Melanie, I see your hand is raised. If you can go ahead and type your question in the box there, one of our counselors will be sure to get that answer for you. One of the other questions that I had, Stephanie, was an outside scholarship. Should a student be reporting that to the financial aid office if they receive an outside? If they receive an outside scholarship, do they need to report that to the school? Who do they need to report that?
Most outside scholarships are co-payable to the student and the school. There are some scholarship and organizations that pay the money directly to the student. So that's going to be based on what that particular scholarship committee requires.
Okay. All right. Very good. So if a student has, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to sift through the questions here. If a student has submitted their FAFSA and it's been, 4 or 5 weeks and they haven't heard anything, who should they be asking questions to? Who should they be contacting for?
Right now, no one. Because again, the schools aren't going to start packaging financial aid until January. So we're really early on. This early FAFSA opening in October is allowing people to get the FAFSA done sooner, but we are in the first year of this. So the college and the universities have to program for this. They are still finishing packaging students for spring and summer of our current year. So they're not going to start packaging financial aid for the fall semester probably until December, January, February. So right now you shouldn't be hearing anything from your school unless it's something about an institutional scholarship or an application to the college for admissions. So the financial aid will just happen in a few months. But again, when you get your acceptance letter, you're going to be able to log into your portal and view the results of your financial aid application for each school that you've applied to and been accepted to with your ID and password for each individual school. The FAFSA is only going to tell you if you're eligible for Pell and student loans. Everything else will be packaged at the institutional level. Okay, perfect. Thank you. You're welcome.
Now, you did also mention about the Bright Futures does not pay for summer courses. It doesn't send any kind of financial aid there. Is summer courses required for Bright Futures?
No, summer courses are not required for Bright Futures, but most of your state university system schools in Florida do require one summer session. So that's an admissions type of requirement that's required by universities themselves, not by Bright Futures. The only reason you would want to take courses in the summer session is if you did not meet the renewal criteria as far as the GPA for your Bright Futures scholarship. So if you're a medallion or a gold seal and you did not earn at least a 2.75 and you want to take summer courses to increase your overall GPA, you would do that during that summer only, during your first year program of study. And then for the medallion, for the academic level, it's the 3.0 GPA in order to renew.
Okay, very good. And one of the last questions I have, unless anything else pops up here, parents are not responsible for any student loans that that their child takes out. Is that correct?
They are not responsible. If a parent took out what we call a parent plus loan, that's in the parent's name. But federal student loans, subsidized and unsubsidized, and I'll take a moment to explain the difference. If you're eligible for subsidized loans, meaning you still have unmet need in your financial aid package after your parents' expected family contribution. So what you're looking at when you're looking at a financial aid award letter is essentially your cost of attendance, which you can find on the net price calculator, minus your family's contribution, okay? So that's going to give you the amount of financial need you have. For example, if you're going to a state university system school and your cost is $24,000 annually and your parent's EFC is $10,000, then that means your true need for financial aid is $14,000. Okay, so they're going to take that right off of the cost of attendance. Well, at a $10,000 EFC, you're not going to get a Pell Grant, but you still have $14,000 in unmet need. You will get a subsidized loan if you have unmet needs still not met. So the subsidized loan does not accrue interest while you're in school through your 6-month grace period, and then when you start making repayment after you graduate or stop attending or drop below half time, it will start accruing interest. The unsubsidized loan, let's say that your parent's EFC is $50,000 and your cost is only $24,000. Well, you're not going to get subsidized loan money because your parent's contribution is more than what it costs. You're only going to get unsubsidized loan money, and that is going to accrue interest when it's been dispersed to the school. So it's going to compound and capitalize, meaning that, you know, in the subsidized category, you might borrow $3,500. When you graduate 4 years from now, that loan is still going to be $3,500. And the unsubsidized category is going to accrue interest at the interest rate, whatever it will be for that year. It changes every July based on the Treasury bill, and Congress will set that. So that $3,500 loan when you graduate 4 years from now could be $4,500 with the compounding interest and capitalization. So that's something to pay attention to. So if you're going to borrow money, the better option, if you're eligible, is the subsidized money because it doesn't accrue any interest. But those are solely in the student's name.
Okay, and so those loans, what is that actual limit per year?
A loan limit depends on your level of education. So for a freshman student, the total loan limit is $5,550 total. The maximum under that of subsidized, depending on if you're eligible for sub and how much of the sub you're eligible for based on the contribution and your need, the maximum subsidized is $3,500, and the remaining $2,000 is unsubsidized. If your parent applies for a plus loan, it is denied based on their credit, because on the student loan, there's no credit check, but on the parent loan, there's a credit check. If they're denied, then the student can access an additional $2,000 in unsubsidized money for a total of $7,500. And then, of course, as you continue on as a sophomore, you know, junior, senior, the loan limits go up based on your number of hours you've completed at your school.
All right, very good. Well, again, thank you, Stephanie. That's all the questions that I have. I don't know if there's